The Alpha lost its mate in battle, then saw the human carrying its cubs through flame and ice. Part 1. The fall of the den. The warship Midnight Fang was dying. Alpha Kale stood on the bridge and watched his world burn. Through the massive view screen, he could see the enemy ships pulling away, their weapons finally silent. They had done their damage. Now they were leaving, like wolves who had torn the throat from their prey and felt no need to stay for the end. Kale was a Varan. His kind looked like wolves that had learned to walk on 2 legs and grew to 8 feet tall. His fur was silver blue, thick and marked with the scars of 100 battles. His eyes burned like molten gold. He had led his pack for 15 years. He had never lost a fight, but today he had lost something far worse. Alpha, his second in command, said softly, "The fires in the civilian quarters are contained. Search teams are moving in now." Kale did not respond. He was already walking toward the door. The civilian quarters were on deck 7. That was where his mate lived. That was where his cubs slept. When the attack began, Kale had been on the bridge, commanding the defense. He had trusted that Yura would keep them safe. Yura was a beta, a warrior in her own right. She had fought beside him in dozens of battles, thought she would protect their children. He had believed this completely. The corridors were filled with smoke and the smell of burned metal. Emergency lights painted everything in angry red. Varan crew members moved past him, carrying wounded, fighting fires, trying to save what could be saved. They lowered their heads as Kale passed. They could smell his fear. An Alpha was never supposed to show fear. Today, Kale did not care. He reached deck 7 and found chaos. The explosion had torn through the outer hull, and emergency doors had slammed shut to contain the breach. But not before fire had spread through half the section. The walls were blackened. The floor was covered in debris. Bodies lay where they had fallen. Kale moved through the destruction like a ghost. He checked every body. Some were crew members. Some were civilians. None of them were Yura. He found her near the nursery. She lay against the wall, her beautiful gray fur burned and torn. A piece of metal had gone through her chest. Her eyes were open, staring at nothing. Her claws were extended, covered in blood that was not her own. She had fought. She had fought hard, but she had not won. Kale knelt beside her body. He pressed his forehead to hers. Among the Varan, this was the deepest gesture of love and grief. He stayed there for a long moment, breathing in the last traces of her scent, feeling the warmth slowly leaving her body. "I am sorry," he whispered. "I should have been here." But grief would have to wait. His cubs were still missing. Kale forced himself to stand. He forced himself to think. The nursery door was open. Inside, he found the small beds where his 3 children slept. The beds were empty. There was blood on the floor, but it was not Varan blood. It smelled wrong. It smelled human.humans. Kale single quotes, S-lip curled back, showing his fangs. 6 months ago, the Galactic Coalition had ordered all member species to begin integration programs. The Varan had been forced to accept human engineers and scientists aboard their ships. Kale had protested. Humans were weak. They were soft. They had no claws, no fangs, no natural weapons. They could not even survive in vacuum without their suits. What use were they? But the Coalition had insisted, and Kale had obeyed. A small team of human engineers had come aboard the Midnight Fang. They kept to themselves mostly, working on the engines and the life support systems. Kale had ignored them. Now, one of them had been in the nursery. One of them had touched his cubs. One of them had taken his children. Alpha. A young warrior approached, head low. "We found a trail. 3 small Varan and 1 human. They went toward the lower decks." Kale felt his claws extend. "Show me." They followed the trail through the ship. It was not hard to track. The human had left blood behind. Varn could smell blood from a great distance. The trail led down through Deck 8, then Deck 9, then Deck 10. Along the way, Kale found more signs of struggle. Claw marks on walls. Broken doors. Places where the human had clearly been forced to fight through fire and debris. "He is running," one of the warriors said. "He's taking them somewhere," another added. "But where?" "There is nothing below Deck 10 but cargo and engineering." Kale said nothing. His mind was filled with dark thoughts. What did this human want with his cubs? Why take them? The Varn had enemies, many enemies. Perhaps this human was a spy. Perhaps he planned to sell the children to the highest bidder. Perhaps he planned to use them as hostages. Whatever the reason, it did not matter. Kale would find this human. He would get his children back. And then he would tear the human apart with his bare claws. The trail continued down to Deck 11. Here, the damage was worse. Entire sections had been exposed to space. The emergency doors had sealed, but the cold had gotten through. Ice covered the walls. The air was thin and bitter. And still, the human had kept going. Kale found himself confused by this. A human should have died here. The cold alone should have killed him. But the blood trail continued. The scent of his cubs continued. Somehow, impossibly, the human was still moving. What manner of creature is this? One of the warriors muttered. Kale did not answer. But for the first time, something other than rage stirred in his chest. It was small and unwelcome, but it was there. It was curiosity. They reached Deck 12, the cargo bay section. Most of it was dark and silent. But in the distance, Kale could see light. Emergency power. Someone had sealed one of the cargo bays and activated the life support. "He is in there," Kale said. "My cubs are in there." He began to run. The pack followed. The Alpha would have his answers. The Alpha would have his children. And if they were harmed, the Alpha would have his vengeance. The Alpha lost its mate in battle, then saw the human carrying its cubs through flame and ice part. 2. The hunt through Hell Park. Do-hyun was not a soldier. He was 34 years old. Born in a small coastal city on Earth called Bizen. He had studied engineering because he liked machines. Machines made sense. Machines did not lie or cheat or break your heart. You put them together correctly, and they worked. You treated them well, and they lasted. People were harder. Do-hyun had joined the Coalition Engineering Corps because it paid well and let him travel. He had never expected to end up on a Varn warship. The Wolf people scared him, if he was being honest. They were so big, so fierce. Their eyes always seemed to be judging him and finding him lacking. He had kept his head down and done his job. He fixed things that broke. He improved systems that needed improving. He ate alone in his small cabin and read books from home. He counted the days until his assignment ended. Then the attack came. Do-hyun had been on Deck 7 when the first explosion hit. He was checking a ventilation unit near the civilian quarters. The blast threw him against the wall and knocked the breath from his lungs. When he opened his eyes, the world was fire and smoke and screaming. He tried to find his way back to the human quarters, but the corridor was blocked. Fire everywhere. He turned around, looking for another route, and that was when he heard it crying, not adult crying. Children crying. Do-hyun followed the sound. His body moved before his mind could catch up. He found a door hanging open, half melted by heat. Inside was some kind of nursery. Small beds, toys scattered on the floor. And in the corner, 3 small shapes pressed together, wailing in fear. They were Varn cubs. Tiny things, barely reaching his knee. Their fur was soft and fluffy, not yet grown into the thick coats of adults. 2 males and 1 female, he guessed. though he was not sure how to tell with Varin. They looked up at him with huge golden eyes filled with terror. Near the door, a female Varin lay dead. She had been trying to protect them. Do-hyun could see that much. But something had killed her. The ship, the enemy. It did not matter now. The fire was spreading. The ceiling was starting to collapse. Do-hyun did not think. He grabbed a blanket from one of the beds, scooped up all 3 cubs, and wrapped them against his chest. They squirmed and cried, but they did not bite him. Perhaps they were too scared. Perhaps they understood he was trying to help. "It is okay," he said in Korean. They could not understand him, but maybe the tone would help. "I have you. I will not let you go." He ran. The next hours were a nightmare. Deck 7 was lost. The fire had spread too far. Do-hyun made it to a stairwell and climbed down to Deck 8, but that was burning too. The enemy had hit the ship hard. Multiple breaches. Multiple fires. The whole vessel was dying around him. He found a maintenance corridor and followed it toward the center of the ship. The cubs had stopped crying. They pressed against his chest, trembling, their small hearts beating so fast he could feel them through his shirt. He talked to them constantly. Nonsense words. Old songs his grandmother had sung when he was small. Anything to keep them calm. On Deck 9, he found a blocked passage. Debris everywhere. No way through. He turned back and tried another route. Dead end. Another route. Fire. Another route. A whole breach, sealed by emergency doors, but leaking cold air that burned his lungs. Do-hyun was starting to panic. He was not a hero. He was not trained for this. He was just an engineer who liked machines. But every time he thought about giving up, he looked down at the cubs in his arms. They had stopped trembling. They were watching him with those big golden eyes, trusting him completely. He could not fail them. On Deck 10, he ran into another Varn. A warrior, massive and scarred, bleeding from a wound on his head. The warrior was confused, disoriented. When he saw Do-hyun carrying the cubs, his eyes went wide. "Human," the warrior growled. "What are you doing with those young?" "Saving them," Do-hyun said. "The upper decks are gone. I need to find somewhere safe." But the warrior was not listening. He was staring at the cubs with a strange expression. Then his face twisted into rage. "Thief," he snarled. "You are stealing our young." "No, I am trying to help them. Please, just let me pass. I need to find a safe place." The warrior attacked. Do-hyun tried to dodge, but he was too slow. Claws raked across his back, tearing through his jacket and into flesh. He screamed. The pain was incredible, like fire and ice at the same time. He fell forward, twisting his body to protect the cubs from the impact. The warrior raised his claws for another strike, but the cubs were crying now, wailing in terror, and something in their cries made the warrior pause. He blinked. The confusion was back in his eyes. He looked at his bloody claws, then at Do-hyun, then at the cubs. I'm sorry," he mumbled. "I do not. My head." He stumbled away, disappearing into the smoke. Do-hyun lay on the floor for a long moment, gasping. His back was on fire. He could feel blood soaking through his clothes. But the cubs were still crying, still scared, and he could not stop now. He forced himself to stand. He kept moving. Deck 11 was the worst. A section had been breached entirely, and though the emergency doors had sealed, the cold had gotten through. Ice covered everything. The air was so thin that Do-hyun could barely breathe. His blood froze on his back. His fingers went numb. The cubs were shivering now, even through the blanket. Their fur was not thick enough to protect them from this cold. If he did not find warmth soon, they would die. Do-hyun took off his thermal jacket. It was the only warm thing he had left. He wrapped it around the cubs and held them tighter against his body, trying to share what little heat he had left. He walked through the ice, one step at a time. His body was failing. He could feel it, but he would not stop. He could not stop. Finally, he reached deck 12, a cargo bay. The door was sealed, but there was an emergency panel nearby. Do-Hyun knew these systems. He had worked on them for months. With numb fingers and fading vision, he forced the panel open and rewired the door dot. Its slit open dot inside was darkness and silence. But there was also a life support unit. Emergency supplies. Heat. Do-Hyun stumbled inside, sealed the door behind him, and activated the life support. Warm air began to flow. He found emergency blankets and made a small nest in the corner. He laid the cubs inside, made sure they were warm, made sure they were breathing. Then he sat down against the wall and let the darkness take him. His last thought before unconsciousness claimed him was simple. He hoped someone would find them. He hoped the cubs would survive. He hoped he had done enough. The Alpha lost its mate in battle, then saw the human carrying its cubs through flame and ice part. 3. The Alpha's judgment Kale reached the cargo bay door and did not slow down. He hit the control panel with his fist, forcing it open through strength alone. The door groaned and slid aside. Kale burst through, claws extended, fangs bared. Ready to kill Dot, what he found made him stop. The cargo bay had been turned into a shelter. Emergency lights cast a soft glow over everything. Warm air circulated from a life support unit that hummed quietly in the corner. And there, in the center of the room, was a small nest made of emergency blankets and thermal padding. 3 small shapes lay inside the nest. Kale's heart nearly stopped. His cubs, his children, alive. They were sleeping. Their small bodies were pressed together for warmth. Their fur was dirty and matted, but they were breathing. They were safe. He could smell it. No fear, no pain. Just the deep, peaceful sleep of young ones who felt protected. Kale took a step toward them, and that was when he saw the human Dot. The man sat against the wall near the nest. He was not moving. His clothes were torn and covered in blood. His face was pale, the color of old bone. His eyes were half open, unfocused, staring at nothing. For a moment, Kale thought he was dead. Then the human blinked Dot slowly. Painfully, he turned his head toward Kale. His eyes found the Alpha, and something flickered in them. Not fear, not anger, just a tired kind of recognition. Kale looked at this creature. This small, weak, soft creature with no claws and no fangs. This human who had somehow carried 3 Varan cubs through fire and ice, through breached halls and frozen corridors, through an entire dying ship. You, Kale said. His voice was low and dangerous. You took my children. The human did not answer immediately. He seemed to be gathering strength just to speak. When his voice came, it was barely a whisper. They are sleeping, he said. Please do not wake them. They have been through enough. Kale stared Dot behind him. His warriors had entered the cargo bay. They spread out, surrounding the human, their claws ready. One of them, the pack medic, moved toward the cubs and began to examine them. Alpha, the medic said after a moment. The young are unharmed. No burns. No burns. They have been fed recently. She paused, her nose twitching. Human food. Emergency rations. He fed them. One of the warriors asked. All of them, from the smell of it. The medic looked at the human with something like confusion in her eyes. He gave them all his food. Kale looked at the human again. The man was thin, too thin. His body was weak from blood loss and cold and hunger. He had given everything he had to cubs that were not his own. Why? The smallest of Kale's cubs stirred in the nest. A female, the youngest of the 3, named Vex. She opened her golden eyes and looked around. When she saw Kale, her face lit up with joy. "Father," she said in her small voice. But she did not run to Kale. Instead, she turned and crawled toward the human. She pressed herself against his leg and looked up at him with complete trust. "Warm one," she said. "Father is here now. You saved us. You are safe too." The human looked down at her. Something changed in his face. The tiredness was still there, but underneath it was something else. Something soft. He lifted a trembling hand and gently touched the fur on her head. "Good," he whispered. "I am glad your father is here." Kale felt something crack inside his chest. He had come here ready to kill. He had come here expecting to find an enemy, a thief, a monster who had stolen his children for dark purposes. Instead, he found a man who had nearly died to save them. The other two cubs were awake now. They joined their sister, pressing against the human, whimpering softly. They did not understand what was happening. They only knew that this creature had kept them warm when everything was cold, had kept them fed when they were hungry, had kept them safe when the world was falling apart. "Why?" Kale asked. The word came out rough, broken. "Why did you do this?" The human looked at him. His eyes were clearer now, though still filled with pain. "I have a niece," he said slowly. "Back on Earth, she is 4 years old. When I saw your children in that corridor, I saw her." He paused, struggling to breathe. "I could not save your mate. I am sorry. She was already gone when I arrived. But I could save them. So I did." "You are not Varn," one of the warriors said. "They are not your young. You owed them nothing. They are children," the human said simply. "That is enough." Silence filled the cargo bay. Kale looked at his warriors. He saw confusion on their faces. Varn culture was built on strength and honor. They respected power. They respected warriors. They did not respect humans. Humans were weak. Humans were soft. Humans were nothing. But this human had done something that most Varn would never do. He had walked through fire for children that were not his own. He had given his food, his warmth, his blood, his life for 3 small cubs he had never met before. That was not weakness. That was something else. Entirely, Kale moved forward. His warriors tensed, watching. The human did not move. He could not move. He simply sat there, waiting for whatever came next. Kale knelt beside him. He leaned close, his golden eyes meeting the human's dark ones. He studied this strange creature for a long moment. Then, slowly, the Alpha lowered his head. Among the Varn, this gesture meant many things: respect, gratitude, acknowledgement of a debt that could not be repaid. Kale had not lowered his head to anyone in 15 years. He lowered it now. "You saved my children," Kale said quietly. "I came here to kill you. Instead, I find myself in your debt." He raised his head and looked at the human with new eyes. "What is your name?" "Park Do-Yan," the human said. "Park Do-Yan," Kale repeated. The human sounds felt strange in his mouth, but he would learn them. "I will remember that name. My pack will remember that name. For as long as the Varn exist, the name Park Do-Yan will be honored." The human looked confused, tired, overwhelmed. "I do not need honor," he said. "I just need a doctor. My back is not feeling very good." Despite everything, Kale felt his mouth twitch. Almost a smile. "Medic," he said. "Help this human. Give him everything he needs. He is packed now." The medic moved forward, already pulling out medical supplies. The other warriors stepped back, their hostility fading into something else. Curiosity, respect, wonder. And in the nest of blankets, 3 small cubs watched their father kneel before a human and understood, in their simple way, that something important had happened. The warm one was staying. The warm one was family now. The Alpha lost its mate in battle, then saw the human carrying its cubs through Flame and Ice Part 4, the debt that cannot be repaid. The medical bay was quiet, except for the soft beeping of machines. Do-hyun lay on his stomach, unable to move. The wounds on his back were deep. The Varan medics had done their best, but he would carry these scars for the rest of his life. 4 long lines running from his shoulder to his hip, where Varan claws had torn through muscle and flesh. He did not mind. Scars meant he was alive. Alive was good. A week had passed since the attack. The Midnight Fang had limped to a repair station, where Varan engineers worked day and night to make it fly again. Do-hyun had offered to help, but the doctors had forbidden it. His body needed rest. His body needed time. So he lay in the medical bay and watched the ceiling, and tried not to think too much. That was when Kale came to visit. The Alpha entered the room quietly, which was strange for such a large creature. He moved to a chair beside Do-hyun's bed and sat down. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "Your wounds are healing," Kale said finally. "Yes," Do-hyun said. "Your doctors are very good." "They are." Kale paused. "The warrior who attacked you, his name was Tarn. He suffered a head wound during the battle. It made him confused, violent. He does not remember attacking you, but he has asked to see you. He wishes to apologize." "There is no need," Do-hyun said. He was hurt. He was not thinking clearly. "I understand." Kale studied him with those golden eyes. "You are strange, human. Among the Varan, such an attack would demand blood payment. A debt of pain. I am not Varan. No, you are not." Kale leaned back in his chair. "The Pack Council met yesterday. We discussed what to do with you." Do-hyun felt a flicker of worry. "Am I in trouble?" "Trouble?" Kale made a sound that might have been a laugh. "No, Park Do-hyun. You are not in trouble. You are the opposite of trouble. You saved the Alpha's children. Among the Varan, there is no greater deed." He paused. "The council debated how to reward you. Some suggested money. Some suggested land on a Varan colony world. Some suggested a ship of your own." "I do not need any of those things," Do-hyun said quietly. "I know." Kale's voice was serious. "That is what I told them. A man who runs through fire for children he has never met does not do it for reward. He does it because it is right. Because he cannot do anything else." The Alpha leaned forward. "This is what I understand about you now, Park Do-hyun. You are not a warrior. You have no claws, no fangs, no strength that the Varan would recognize. But you have something else. Something we do not have a word for. What is that?" Kale thought for a moment. "Heart," he said finally. "You have heart. Not the organ. The other thing. The thing that makes a person keep going when everything tells them to stop. The thing that makes a person give their last food to hungry children. The thing that makes a weak creature stronger than a strong one." Do-hyun did not know what to say. He looked away, uncomfortable with the praise. "The council has reached a decision," Kale continued. "We will not give you money or land or ships. We will give you something more valuable." He paused. "We will give you family." Do-hyun looked back at him, confused. "You are Pack now," Kale said. "This is not a title. It is not a rank. It is a fact. Where my children go, you are welcome. Where I go, you have a place. If you are ever in danger, the Varan will come for you. If you are ever in need, the Varan will provide. This is not charity. This is blood debt. The deepest bond our people know." "I do not understand," Do-hyun said. "I am human. I cannot be Varan." "No," Kale agreed. "You cannot be Varan, but you can be Pack. You can be family." He reached out and placed his massive clawed hand on Do-hyun's shoulder. gentle as a whisper. My children call you the warm one. They ask about you every day. They want to see you. They want to know if you are healing. They want to know if you will stay. Da-hyun felt something tighten in his chest. He thought about his life before this. His small cabin. His quiet meals alone. His books from home. He had been comfortable, but he had also been lonely. He had not realized how lonely until now. What about my work? He asked. The coalition assigned me here. I have duties, responsibilities. The coalition has been informed, Kale said. They understand the situation. If you wish to return to human space, you may. We will not stop you. But if you wish to stay, there is a place for you, always. Do-hyun closed his eyes. He thought about Earth, his sister, his niece. He had not seen them in 2 years. He missed them. But he also knew that this was something different. Something rare. Something that did not happen to people like him. A chance to belong. The cubs, he said slowly. Vex and her brothers. What are their names? The older male is Rock, the younger male is Kai, and you know Vex. Kale smiled, a strange expression on his wolf-like face. She's the one who named you. Warm one. She says you kept her warm when everything was cold. Da-hyun smiled too, despite the pain. She is a good child. She is. They all are. Kale stood up. Rest now, Park Do-hyun. Heal. When you are ready, my children wish to see you. And when you are stronger, we will talk about the future. He moved toward the door, then paused. I never thanked you. For what you did, for what you gave, you do not need to thank me. I know. Kale's golden eyes were soft, warm in a way that Da-hyun had never seen from a Varn before. But I want to. Thank you for saving my children. Thank you for carrying them through fire and ice. Thank you for not giving up. He bowed his head slightly. The Varn will not forget. I will not forget. Then he was gone, and Do-hyun was alone with the beeping machines in the quiet room. He lay there for a long time, thinking. His back hurt. His body was weak. He was far from home, surrounded by creatures who had frightened him just a week ago. But for the first time in years, he did not feel lonely. He felt like he belonged. 3 days later, when the doctors finally let him have visitors, 3 small cubs burst into the medical bay and climbed onto his bed. They were careful of his wounds, gentle in a way that seemed impossible for young predators. They curled up around him, pressing their soft fur against his body, and told him everything that had happened while he was healing. Vex fell asleep against his chest. Her small ear pressed to his heartbeat. Warm one is home now, she murmured. Warm one stays. Do-hyun stroked her fur and smiled. Maybe she was right, Da. Maybe he was home. The Alpha lost its mate in battle, then saw the human carrying its cubs through flame and ice part 5. The human of the Varan 5. Years passed like water flowing downhill. The story spread across the galaxy. It started as a whisper among Varn packs, passed from ship to ship, from world to world. The human who carried the Alpha's cubs through fire and ice. The weak creature who proved stronger than anyone expected. The outsider who became family. Soon, other species heard the tale. The insect-like Keth spoke of it in their hives. The tall, thin Ilari discussed it in their libraries. Even the cold and distant mechanics, beings of metal and wire, recorded it in their databases. The universe learned the name Park Do-hyun. Do-hyun himself did not care about fame. He cared about the life he had built. A life he never expected. A life he never knew he needed. He still lived on the Midnight Fang, though it was a different ship now. The old one had been too damaged to repair. A new vessel, larger and stronger, had taken its name and its crew. Do-hyun had helped build it. His hands had touched every system, every wire, every piece of metal. The Varan engineers had learned to respect him, not because of what he had done 5 years ago, but because of what he did every day. He was good at his work. He solved problems that others could not solve. He made machines run smoother, faster, better. And he never complained, never boasted, never asked for special treatment. He is strange, the engineers would say, but he is useful. He's one of us now. But it was the cubs who had changed the most. They were not cubs anymore. Rock, the oldest, was nearly as tall as Do-hyun now. He had grown into a strong young warrior, proud and fierce, with his father's golden eyes and his mother's gray fur. He trained with the other young Varan, learning to fight, learning to lead. But every evening, he came to Do-hyun's cabin to talk, to ask questions, to seek advice. Uncle Do, he would say, using the human word that Do-hyun had taught him. How do humans handle fear? How do you fight when you know you cannot win? Do-hyun would smile and tell him stories. Stories from Earth. Stories about human history. About ordinary people who did extraordinary things. Stories about soldiers who held their ground against impossible odds. Stories about doctors who worked through plagues. Stories about firefighters who ran into burning buildings to save strangers. Humans are afraid all the time, Do-hyun would say. That is our secret. We do not pretend we are not scared. We just keep moving anyway. Tai, the middle child, was different from his brother. He was quieter, more thoughtful. He liked books and learning. He spent hours in the ship's library, reading about other species, other worlds, other ways of thinking. He wanted to be a diplomat someday, a bridge between the Varan and the rest of the galaxy. You taught me this, he told Do-hyun once. You showed me that different does not mean enemy, that weakness can be strength, that a human can be pack. And Vex, little Vex, who was not so little anymore, she had grown into a fierce young female, quick and clever, and absolutely devoted to her human uncle. She had learned Korean from him, practicing for hours until she could speak it almost perfectly. She wore a small metal pendant around her neck, a gift Do-hyun had made for her from spare parts. Inside it was a tiny photograph of Do-hyun's niece back on Earth. She is my cousin, Vex would tell anyone who asked. The warm one's niece is my cousin. We are family now. Do-hyun had visited Earth twice in the past 5 years. He had introduced his sister to Kale through video calls. He had shown his niece, Minji, pictures of the Varan cubs. Minji was 9 years old now, and she thought having alien cousins was the most amazing thing in the world. When can I meet them? She would ask every time he called. When can I visit the ship? When can I see the wolves? Soon, Do-hyun would promise. Soon. Today, Do-hyun stood on the observation deck of the new Midnight Fang. Stars filled the view screen. Millions of lights scattered across the darkness like diamonds on black cloth. He never got tired of this view. After all these years, space still amazed him. Footsteps behind him. Heavy. Familiar. You are thinking again, Kale said, moving to stand beside him. The Alpha was older now, a few gray hairs appearing in his silver blue fur. But he was still strong. Still fierce. Still the leader of his pack. I am always thinking, Do-hyun said. It is a human habit, a dangerous habit. Kale smiled. What are you thinking about? Do-hyun was quiet for a moment. I am thinking about 5 years ago. About the fire and the ice. About how scared I was. You did not seem scared. I was terrified, Do-hyun admitted. I thought I was going to die. I thought we were all going to die. I kept moving because I did not know what else to do. Kale nodded slowly. That is what courage is, Park Do-hyun. Not the absence of fear. The decision to keep moving despite it. He looked at his human brother, his golden eyes warm. I have led Varan warriors for 20 years. I have seen bravery in many forms. But what you did that day, that was something special. Something I had never seen before. I just did what any person would do. No, Kale shook his head. That is where you are wrong. Most people would not have done what you did. Most Voran would not have done what you did. You ran toward danger. You gave everything for children you did not know. You refused to stop when your body was failing. He placed a massive clawed hand on Do-hyun's shoulder. That is not what any person would do. That is what you did. Only you. From behind them came the sound of voices. Young voices, arguing and laughing. Are okay, Kai? And Vex burst onto the observation deck, still bickering about something. When they saw Do-hyun, their faces lit up. Vex immediately ran to his side and wrapped her arms around him. Uncle Do, she said, you promised to teach me more Korean today. You said you would show me the song about the rabbit. The rabbit song can wait, Rock said. He promised to help me with my combat forms first. Both of you are wrong, Kai said calmly. He promised to explain human philosophy to me. What did you call it, Uncle? The trolley problem? Do-hyun laughed. It was a good laugh, full and warm. The kind of laugh he had not known he was capable of before coming here. I promised all three of you different things. We will do them all. We have time. Kale watched this scene with a full heart. He remembered the day he found this human sitting against a wall, bleeding and broken, refusing to move because 3 small cubs were sleeping nearby. He remembered thinking that humans were weak, that humans were useless. He had been wrong. Humans were not weak. They were different. They had a kind of strength that the Varan did not understand at first. A strength that came from something deeper than muscle and claw. A strength that came from love. The galaxy had many questions about humanity. Were they dangerous? Were they trustworthy? Were they worthy of respect? The Varan had an answer now. An answer they gave to anyone who asked. Humanity is the species that runs toward danger. Humanity is the species that gives their last meal to hungry children. Humanity is the species that finds family in every corner of the universe. The Alpha had lost his mate in battle. His heart had been broken. His world had been destroyed. But in fire and ice, he had found something unexpected. He had found a brother. Do-hyun looked at the stars one more time, then turned to the 3 young Varan waiting for him. His family. His pack. Come on, he said in Korean, then switched to Varan. Let us go home. They walked together off the observation deck, their voices mixing in the air, human and Varan. Different but united. Behind them, the stars kept shining, and somewhere in the vast galaxy, stories were being told about a human named Park Do-hyun, the warm one, the one who stayed.